The first thing I remembered after dying was the sound of paper tearing. Not the car horn. Not the windshield folding inward. Not my own scream trapped somewhere behind my teeth.
Paper.
A slow, deliberate rip, as if someone had taken a document, pinched it between both hands, and divided my life neatly down the middle. Then I opened my eyes in homeroom. My cheek was pressed against a cold desk. Sunlight striped the classroom floor. Somebody behind me was tapping a mechanical pencil in a rhythm I had not heard in 8 years, and on the whiteboard, written in Mr. Vale's narrow handwriting, were the words, Senior Environmental Residency, Final Permission Slips due today. My lungs forgot how to work. I lifted my head. I was 17 again. My hair fell past my shoulders in the blunt cut I had hated. My school blazer was too tight at the elbows. A faded blue ink mark stained the side of my left hand. Around me, students complained about Monday, university applications, and the cafeteria's rubbery eggs, unaware that I had lived another decade, built a career, lost my mother, uncovered half a crime, and died before I could prove the rest. On my desk sat a cream envelope. My name was written across it in my mother's hand.
Elena Marlue.
Inside was the signed permission slip that had ruined my life the first time. I stared at the folded edge until the room blurred. Don't overthink it. The voice came from my right. Adrien Cole leaned against the side of my desk with one hand in his pocket. At 17, he already knew how to look polished without appearing vain. Dark hair swept back, school captain pin fixed perfectly to his blazer, smile measured to seem reassuring. Teachers called him composed. Parents called him impressive. Students called him untouchable. I had once called him my best friend. Later, much later, I had called him the reason my mother died, believing I had betrayed her. He nodded toward the envelope. You brought it. I closed my fingers over it. A flicker passed through his eyes.
Tiny. Quick. Gone.
Yes, I said. Good. His smile returned. Give it to me. I'll hand both of ours in. There it was. The first move. In my previous life, I had trusted him. I had handed him the slip before first period because he said the residency coordinator wanted them collected together. He returned 10 minutes later, pale and angry, claiming mine had been rejected because my mother had written an incorrect emergency contact number. He told me to throw it away. Then he gave me a replacement form. I signed my mother's name. 3 days later, the school accused me of forging parental consent, falsifying medical information, and manipulating access to the environmental residency's restricted research archive. Adrien produced the original slip as evidence, except the lower section had been altered. My mother's signature remained, but the emergency contact was changed, my declared allergy was erased, and a handwritten note supposedly authorized Adrien to collect my medical documents. I was suspended. My scholarship application collapsed. My mother, already exhausted from chemotherapy, was dragged into meetings where administrators implied she had helped me cheat. Adrien became the sole student leader of the residency project. My research disappeared into his award-winning presentation. And 1 month later, my mother died after an ambulance was sent to an outdated address during a medical emergency. For years, I believed those disasters were separate. They were not. I looked up at him now, alive again, and standing close enough that I could see a faint shaving cut beneath his jaw. Actually, I said, I'm handing it in myself. His smile held, but his shoulders stiffened. We're already late. The bell hasn't rung.
Anna.
His voice softened, the way it always did before he pushed me toward a mistake. Mr. Vale asked me to collect them. No, he didn't. A pencil stopped tapping behind me. Adrien glanced toward the teacher's desk. Mr. Vale was helping a student log into the attendance portal and had not heard us. Adrien lowered his voice. Why are you being difficult? The old me would have apologized. The dead me smiled. Why are you nervous? His expression changed so slightly that no one else would have noticed.
I did.
I had spent 8 years reconstructing his lies from scraps. Email timestamps, archived policies, copies of documents my mother kept in a metal biscuit tin, and one hospital recording I never had the courage to play twice. He reached for the envelope. I pulled it back. Give it to me, he whispered.
No. The bell rang.
Every student moved at once, chairs scraping, bags dropping, conversations snapping shut. Mr. Vale clapped his hands and called for permission slips. Adrien stepped away from me as though nothing had happened. But as I walked to the front, he followed. I could feel him behind my shoulder. Mr. Vale held out a plastic folder. Signed by a parent or a legal guardian? Yes. Medical section completed? Yes. Emergency contact verified? I turned slightly. Adrien's face was calm again, but his eyes were locked on the envelope. I did not put it in the folder. Instead, I asked, "Could you scan this in front of me?" Mr. Vale blinked.
Now.
The office loses paperwork sometimes. A few students laughed. Mr. Vale did not. Our school had misplaced 3 exam accommodation forms that term, so the request was not unreasonable. He shrugged. All right.
Leave it on my desk.
I'll scan it after attendance. I'd prefer to watch. Adrien spoke before Mr. Vale could answer. Elena, stop being dramatic. The room went quiet enough for his words to land. I looked at him. He realized his mistake immediately. Mr. Vale lifted one eyebrow. Is there a reason she shouldn't watch? No, sir. Adrien smiled, but the muscles around his mouth tightened. I just don't want her stressing herself out. How thoughtful, I said. Mr. Vale took the slip from me, unfolded it, and walked to the printer near the classroom door. I stayed beside him. Adrien remained at his desk, staring at his open notebook without writing a word. The scanner light moved beneath the glass. A bright green line. A soft mechanical hum. A copy emerged. Mr. Vale stamped the original with the date and time, then handed the copy to me.
There.
Officially received at 8:43. Could you initial both pages? Both. The back has the trip conditions. He flipped it over and frowned. I already knew what he had seen. At the bottom of the second page, my mother had added a handwritten sentence in blue ink. I authorized my daughter Elena to attend, but no student or staff member may access, copy, collect, or amend her medical records without contacting me directly. That sentence had not appeared in the version used against me. In my first life, I had forgotten it existed. My mother had written it because Adrien's father, Dr. Stephen Cole, served on the residency's advisory board and had requested medical information from students. She distrusted him. I had dismissed her concern as paranoia. Mr. Vale annealed the page. You're organized. My mother is. The words almost broke me. She was alive. At that moment she was across town, likely sitting at our kitchen table in her robe, drinking bitter tea and pretending the pain in her ribs was manageable. She still had 7 weeks before the infection that killed her. 7 weeks before the ambulance delay. 7 weeks that, this time, I would not waste defending myself against a lie. I folded the copy carefully. When I returned to my seat, Adrien leaned close. You need to throw that away. I looked straight ahead. Why? It has sensitive information. So does the original. You don't understand. I understand paper. His jaw flexed. Throw it away, Elena. There was no warmth in his voice now. No concern. Only command. I turned to him and said quietly, You told me that before. He froze. I let the silence stretch one heartbeat too long, then opened my notebook as if the sentence meant nothing. For the rest of homeroom, Adrien did not look at me. That was how I knew the past could be changed. Not because I had saved the slip. Because for the first time, he was afraid of me. At lunch, I did not go to the courtyard where Adrien and I usually sat with the student council group. I went to the administration building and asked to see Ms. Darcy, the school records officer. She had been invisible to me in my first life. A woman in her 50s with silver-framed glasses, practical shoes, and the tired patience of someone who spent her days fixing other people's filing errors. Years later, I learned she had resigned 2 weeks after my suspension. Officially, she left for family reasons. Unofficially, she had questioned alterations in the school archive. I found her behind a counter stacked with enrollment forms.
Elena Marlue.
She recognized me. What can I help you with? I want to confirm who has access to my permission slip after submission. She removed her glasses. That is a specific question. I'm asking for a specific reason. I placed my scanned copy on the counter. She read my mother's handwritten note twice. Then she looked at me differently. Has someone asked for your medical records? Not directly. That is not what I asked. I hesitated. In my first life, every adult had interpreted hesitation as guilt. Now I used it carefully. Adrien Cole offered to submit my form. When I refused, he told me to throw away my copy. Ms. Darcy's expression did not change, but she slid the paper closer to herself. Did he touch the original?
No.
Has he ever had access to documents in this office? His father is on the residency board. I know who his father is. The sharpness in her voice surprised me. She lowered it. Permission slips should be scanned by the receiving teacher and transferred to a restricted folder. Students do not handle them. Board advisors do not handle them. Parents may request copies only for their own children. Could someone replace a scanned form? Not without leaving a record. That answer carried weight. I leaned forward. Could someone replace it if they had an administrator's login? Her eyes narrowed. Why are you asking? Because 8 years from now, I would discover a deleted access log showing that Ms. Darcy's credentials opened my file at 6:12 p.m. when she was attending her sister's wedding 3 hours away. Because the login came from the principal's conference room. Because Adrien had been photographed in that room after a student council meeting. Because the photograph vanished from the school website 2 days after my suspension. But I could not say any of that. Not yet. I think somebody plans to alter my form, I said. Ms. Darcy studied me for a long moment. That is a serious accusation. I know. Do you have evidence? I tapped the copy. This is what they want me to destroy. She looked down again. Then she opened a drawer, removed a clear evidence sleeve, and placed my copy inside. What are you doing? Creating a secondary record. She sealed the sleeve and wrote the date across the strip. You will keep your own copy. I will keep this one in a location outside the residency file. My throat tightened. In the other life, I had thought no one believed me. Maybe I had simply reached the right people too late. Thank you. Do not thank me yet. She handed me a business card. On the back, she wrote a number. This is the direct office line. If anyone asks you to sign a new form, call me before you do anything. What if they say the first one was rejected? Call me. What if they say it was lost? Call me. What if Adrien tells me? Especially then. The door behind me opened. Adrien walked in. For one wild second, I thought he had followed me. Then I saw the stack of student council reimbursement forms in his hand. His gaze moved from me to Ms. Darcy, then to the empty counter. Elena, he said lightly. I was looking for you. No, you weren't. Ms. Darcy put her glasses back on. Can I help you, Mr. Cole? He laid the forms on the counter. These need approval before the residency fundraiser. I'll review them. He did not move. Neither did I. The air between us tightened. Finally, he said, Elena, we have a project meeting. I'm not going. You're the data lead. Not anymore. That startled him. What? I quit. The word came out cleaner than I expected. In my first life, our project had consumed me. We were analyzing heavy metal contamination in stormwater near low-income housing. I designed the sampling method, built the database, and found a cluster that suggested illegal industrial dumping. Adrien handled presentation and outreach. He told me we were partners. Then he removed my name. Now I understood why. The contamination site bordered land owned by a subsidiary connected to his father's private clinic network. Our research threatened more than a school competition. It threatened a development deal. Adrien stared at me. You can't quit 4 days before the residency. I just did. You'll destroy the entire submission. Then rebuild it. You know I can't. The honesty slipped out before he could catch it. Ms. Darcy looked up. Adrien smiled quickly. I mean, no one understands Elena's system as well as she does. That sounds like a reason to credit her, Ms. Darcy said. He ignored the remark. Elena, can we talk privately?
No.
His face hardened. Ms. Darcy picked up the reimbursement forms. Mr. Cole, unless there is something else, I have work to do. He looked at me once more. This isn't like you. I almost laughed. He was right. The girl he knew was already dead. By the end of the school day, 3 things happened. First, Mr. Vale emailed me that the residency office could not locate my permission slip and needed a replacement. Second, Adrien sent me a photograph of a blank form with one message: sign this and stop making trouble. Third, my mother called to ask why a man from the school's advisory board had requested confirmation of my allergy history. I stood beneath the covered walkway while rain began hammering the metal roof. Who called you? I asked. He said his name was Dr. Cole. My hand tightened around the phone. What did you tell him? That your medical information was none of his business. She coughed, then added, he did not appreciate that. Mom, listen to me. Do not send the school anything. Do not confirm anything except through Ms. Darcy. Who is Ms. Darcy? The records officer. Elena, what is happening? Rainwater sprayed across my shoes. Students ran toward buses, laughing and shrieking. Adrien stood near the gate beneath a black umbrella, watching me. I turned my back to him. I think someone is trying to replace my permission slip. Silence. Then my mother said, come home. I have to stop at the library. Come home now. The force in her voice brought back a memory I had buried. Her sitting at the kitchen table after my suspension, one hand pressed to her chest, asking me why I had forged her name. I had cried and shouted that Adrien made me do it. She believed me eventually, but not before something between us cracked. This time, I would not let the crack form. I'm coming. Do not go anywhere alone. I looked toward the gate again. Adrien had disappeared. I ended the call and walked toward the staff car park instead of the buses. Ms. Darcy's office light was still on. I planned to show her Mr. Vale's email. I never reached the door. A hand caught my elbow and pulled me into the narrow passage between the auditorium and the administration building.
Adrien.
He pinned the umbrella beneath one arm and held my original permission slip in his other hand. Not a copy. The original. Mr. Vale's red date stamp marked the top corner. My heart slammed once hard. There, Adrien said. Rain dripped from his hair. His calm mask was gone. The office found it. I looked at the paper. Why do you have it? They asked me to bring it to you.
Who?
The residency coordinator. Name? He hesitated. I smiled. You should have prepared that part. He shoved the slip toward me.
Take it.
I did not. Look at the medical section, he said. I looked. My mother's handwriting filled the boxes exactly as before, but a new line had been added beside my allergy information. Student carries emergency epinephrine in front pocket of travel pack. I had never carried epinephrine. I was not allergic to anything requiring it. The addition was written in blue ink that almost matched my mother's. Almost. What did you do? I asked. Adrien's eyes flicked toward the security camera above the passage entrance. It faced the car park, not us. Nothing. Your mother must have added it. She didn't. Then the school did. Schools don't invent allergies. He stepped closer. You need to throw this away. The exact words. The exact command. For one dizzy second, the years collapsed. I was 17 and 25, alive and dying, holding 2 versions of the same paper in 2 different timelines. Why? I whispered. Because it's wrong. So we report the alteration.
No.
Why not? Because if this becomes an investigation, the residency will be cancelled. Only for me? For everyone. There it was again, his favorite weapon. Make my resistance selfish. Make his crime a community burden. I took the slip at last. His shoulders loosened. Then I folded it once and slid it inside my blazer. I'm taking it to Ms. Darcy. He grabbed my wrist. Pain shot up my arm. No, you're not. The rain grew louder, drumming over the roof and swallowing the sounds of the car park. I looked down at his hand. He released me immediately.
Sorry.
His voice dropped. I'm trying to protect you. From what? He glanced toward the passage exit. You don't know what your mother signed. I watched her sign it.
No.
You watched her sign the front. A cold thread moved through me. "What's on the back?" He said nothing. I pulled the slip out and unfolded it. The back page had changed. My mother's handwritten restriction was gone. In its place was a typed consent clause authorizing the residency's medical advisor to access my health records, change emergency treatment plans, and act in place of a parent during the trip. Below it sat my mother's signature. A duplicate. Perfect at first glance. But I knew the pressure of her pen strokes. The slight upward hook on the M. The tremor chemotherapy had put into the second loop of her surname. This signature had been copied from the front and printed. My skin went cold. Adrien watched me understand. "Throw it away," he said. "Right now." I looked at him. "Your father needs access to my medical records." He did not answer. "Why?"
Elena.
"Why?" A door slammed somewhere beyond the passage. Adrien lowered his voice. "Because the residency insurance requires it." "Then why forge consent?" "It isn't forged." I pulled my scanned copy from my folder and held the pages side by side. His face lost color. Same date stamp. Same front page signature. Different backs. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he lunged. I stepped back, but his fingers caught the edge of my copy. The paper tore halfway down the center. That sound. The sound I remembered after dying. I stopped breathing. Adrien did not.
He grabbed again.
I twisted away and shouted, "Miss Darcy." The administration door opened at once. Ms. Darcy stepped into the rain with the security guard behind her. Adrien released the paper. Too late. The guard had seen his hand on it. Ms. Darcy saw the torn copy, the original in my grip, and Adrien's expression. "What is going on?" Adrien recovered first. Elena became upset. I was trying to calm her. I held both papers out. "One is the version Mr. Vale scanned this morning. The other is the original he submitted." Someone changed the back page. Ms. Darcy took them. Her eyes moved line by line. Adrien said, "That's impossible." She looked at the red stamp, then at the staple holes. The original had been restapled. She turned to the guard. "Call Principal Hargrove." Adrien's voice sharpened. "There's no need." Ms. Darcy looked at him over the top of her glasses. "Oh," she said, "there is every need." Principal Hargrove did not call the police. That was the first sign the problem reached higher than Adrien. He gathered us in the conference room, closed the blinds, and instructed the security guard to wait outside. Ms. Darcy sat beside me with both versions of the permission slip sealed in separate plastic sleeves. Adrien sat across from us, hands folded, face restored to school captain calm. Principal Hargrove examined the papers for less than a minute. "This appears to be a clerical duplication issue," he said. Ms. Darcy's mouth tightened. "A clerical duplication does not remove handwriting, add a consent clause, reproduce a signature, and reattach a page. Scanners malfunction. This is ink and toner. We should avoid conclusions until the residency office reviews it." I watched him carefully. In my first life, Hargrove had led every meeting about my alleged forgery. He had spoken to my sick mother with polished disappointment, as though humiliating us was a painful duty. I had mistaken his composure for fairness. Now I noticed what I had missed. He never looked surprised. Not by the altered form, not by Adrien holding it, not by the forged signature. He looked inconvenienced. I said, "Call my mother." Hargrove turned to me. "That may not be necessary. It is her signature." "Elena, this can be handled internally." "Then handling it should include the person whose consent was forged." Adrien leaned forward. "No one said it was forged. My mother will." Hargrove's gaze shifted to him for the briefest instant.
"There."
A signal, without words. I understood the shape of the room. Adrien was not a reckless student improvising alone. Hargrove knew enough to protect him, and possibly enough to have helped. Ms. Darcy placed her phone on the table. "I will call Mrs. Marlowe." Hargrove held up a hand. "Personal devices are not permitted during a formal student matter." "This is not yet a formal student matter," she replied. "You just called it a clerical issue." The silence that followed was almost beautiful. She dialed. My mother answered on the second ring. Ms. Darcy introduced herself, explained that 2 versions of my permission slip existed, and asked whether she had typed or signed an additional medical consent clause. No, my mother said through the speaker. Her voice was weak, but unmistakably sharp. I wrote the opposite. No one was to access Elena's records without calling me. Hargrove interrupted. Mrs. Marlowe, there may have been confusion regarding the residency's standard conditions. There is no confusion. Put my daughter on. Ms. Darcy slid the phone toward me. I'm here. Are you safe? I looked at Adrien. Yes. Are you sure? Yes. Then listen carefully. Do not sign anything. Do not surrender your copy. I am coming to the school. Hargrove straightened. Mrs. Marlowe, given your health, that is unnecessary. My mother's reply came instantly. My health is precisely why you should not tell me what is necessary. The call ended. For the first time, Adrien looked genuinely cornered. Hargrove stood. We will reconvene when Mrs. Marlowe arrives. Until then, the documents remain in my custody. No, Ms. Darcy said. His expression hardened. Excuse me? The documents remain with Records Administration. Chain of custody has already been compromised. I am the principal. And I am the records officer responsible for reporting unauthorized alterations. He stepped closer to her. Be very careful, Nadia. Her first name changed the atmosphere. It was not familiarity. It was a warning. She did not flinch. I have been careful for 16 years. Adrien looked between them. I realized he had expected obedience from everyone, including Hargrove. He had not expected Ms. Darcy to resist in front of witnesses. Neither had Hargrove. My mother arrived 40 minutes later wearing a gray coat over her pajamas and lipstick applied with furious precision. She looked smaller than I remembered, but she entered the conference room like a judge returning to court. She brought a lawyer. Not a family lawyer. We had never been wealthy enough to keep one. She brought Celia Boone, her former university roommate, who worked in health privacy and medical negligence. In my first life, my mother had been too ashamed to call her until weeks after my suspension. This time, shame never entered the building. Celia reviewed both permission slips, photographed them, and asked Ms. Darcy to describe every person who had handled the original. Mr. Vale joined us and confirmed he had scanned the document at 8:43, placed it in a sealed classroom folder, and handed that folder to Adrien at 9:05 because Adrien said Principal Hargrove had authorized student council leaders to transport residency forms. Hargrove denied giving the instruction. Adrien denied saying he had. Mr. Vale went pale. So one of you is lying, Celia said. No one answered. She asked for surveillance footage from the corridor, the administration entrance, and the printer room. Hargrove said the camera system was undergoing maintenance. Ms. Darcy said, "It was working this morning." He replied, "The recording server failed at noon." Celia checked her watch. Convenient. Then came the interruption none of them expected. The security guard knocked and entered with a small black device in his palm. "I found this under the conference table," he said. It was a voice recorder. Adrien stood so quickly his chair struck the wall. "That's mine," he said. Every eye turned toward him. He realized his mistake. The guard frowned. Why was it taped beneath the table? Adrien's mouth opened. Nothing came out. In my first life, I never knew about the recorder. I only knew that excerpts from confidential meetings had somehow reached Dr. Cole before my mother and I did. Adrien had planted it earlier, probably to capture Hargrove coaching witnesses or to protect himself if the adults abandoned him. Now it became evidence against all of them. Celia held out her hand. "Do not touch any buttons." The guard gave it to her. Hargrove said, "This is a school matter." It stopped being merely a school matter when someone forged medical consent. Adrien looked at Hargrove. Hargrove did not look back. That was the exact moment their alliance cracked. It did not explode. It shifted. A fraction of distance opened between them, and both noticed it. Adrien sat down slowly. Celia asked, "Does this recorder contain today's meeting?" He said nothing. "Does it contain previous meetings?" Still nothing. My mother reached for my hand under the table. Her fingers were cold. Celia sealed the recorder in an envelope. We are leaving. Elena will not attend class or the residency until the school provides written confirmation that her records are secure. Hargrove stood. Absences may affect her scholarship eligibility. My mother squeezed my hand harder. Celia smiled without warmth. Was that a threat made in response to a privacy complaint?
No. Good.
Then put your assurance in writing. We left with copies of everything. In the car, my mother did not start the engine. Rain crawled down the windshield. Celia sat in the back, already typing notes into her phone. I stared at my mother's hands resting on the steering wheel and remembered those same hands trembling over my suspension letter. I'm sorry, I said.
She turned to me.
For what? For not listening when you said the Coles were dangerous. Her eyes narrowed. I said Dr. Cole was invasive. I did not say dangerous. He is. How do you know? I had prepared lies for teachers, administrators, and Adrien. I had not prepared one for my mother. I found things, I said. What things? The contamination project connects to land owned by a company linked to Dr. Cole's clinic group. Adrien needs my data. The permission slip gives his father access to my medical records. They invented an allergy and added authority to change treatment. I think they planned to create an incident at the residency, then blame me for falsifying the form. Celia stopped typing. My mother's face drained of color. That is an extraordinary theory, Celia said. I know. What evidence supports the planned incident? Adrien's reaction when I asked what would happen at the residency. That is not evidence.
No.
What else? In my previous life, a chemical exposure alarm had occurred on the second night. I was not there because I had been suspended. Adrien later claimed he rescued 2 students after a solvent spill. His heroism dominated the competition presentation and helped him win a national scholarship. Years later, one of those students told me the spill was staged. The containers were empty. The alarm came from a device hidden in a ventilation grate. That student died before signing a statement. I could not explain how I knew. The residency schedule includes a night sampling exercise at the old Renfield treatment plant, I said. There is a ventilation control room near the archive lab. Check whether Adrien requested access. Celia stared at me. Why that room? Because it would let someone trigger an alarm. My mother whispered, Elena. I looked at her. There was fear in her face, but not disbelief. She knew me. She knew I was withholding something. She also knew I had never invented details for attention. Celia closed her notes. We verify before we accuse. I will request the access list and insurance documents. Your mother will obtain copies of every medical request received by her clinic. You'll give me your project files, messages from Adrien, and the original email inviting you to the residency. I will. And you will not contact Adrien. I thought of 8 years spent wishing I had made him confess. All right. The residency was canceled before lunch. For most students, that should have ended the story. For Adrien, cancellation was not defeat. It was urgency. He needed the contamination project submitted to the national competition by Friday. Without the residency presentation, he needed my raw files, my sampling notes, and the calibration key stored on the school laboratory server. He believed I was at home with my mother. I let him believe it. On Thursday morning, I entered school through the music wing, wearing a theater crew hoodie borrowed from my friend Priya. Ms. Darcy had arranged access. Celia had arranged for an independent digital forensic examiner to observe the server remotely. The police knew we suspected unauthorized access, but would not act without evidence. My task was simple: place a clean copy of my project folder in the laboratory directory and wait. The folder contained real data with one deliberate marker, a hidden formula that generated a unique checksum whenever exported. It would not damage anything. It would prove where the file came from. At 10:07, Adrien logged in. Not with his student account. With Principal Hargrove's credentials. We watched from a small records room as the cursor moved across the remote screen. Adrien opened my folder, copied every file, deleted the authorship log, and replaced my name with his. Then he opened a document labeled Medical Incident Protocol. My breath caught. Inside was a script for the staged residency emergency. At 21:40, trigger solvent sensor in archive corridor. At 21:43, report Elena Marlowe missing. At 21:45, locate her near restricted cabinet. At 21:47, administer emergency injector due to known allergy. At 21:50, recover contaminated sample case from her bag. The final line read, obtain verbal statement while disoriented. Priya, standing beside me, covered her mouth. Ms. Darcy whispered, Dear God. The forensic examiner captured the screen. Adrien copied the document to a drive, then deleted it from the server. He believed he had erased the plan. Instead, he had authenticated it. Celia called the police liaison. Move now, she said. We watched Adrien open one last folder. It was titled Hargrove, Assurances. Audio files appeared. The recorder. Copies had been uploaded to the server. Adrien clicked the newest recording, and Hargrove's voice filled the remote feed. If the girl resists, the scholarship review gives us leverage. Then Dr. Cole answered. Her mother will not survive a prolonged dispute. Delay is enough. The room around me disappeared. I heard my previous life inside that sentence. The meetings. The unanswered appeals. The ambulance sent to the wrong address. My mother growing weaker while administrators postponed every correction. Delay had not been incompetence. Delay had been strategy. Adrien stopped the audio. For almost a minute, the cursor did not move. He had not heard that recording before. Hargrove and his father had planned to use my mother's illness against me, and Adrien had just discovered he was not the architect of the entire scheme. He was a tool inside it. Then the laboratory door opened on the surveillance feed. Hargrove entered. Adrien spun from the computer. Even without sound, their argument was obvious. Hargrove pointed at the screen. Adrien held up the drive. Hargrove reached for it. Adrien stepped back. The laboratory microphone activated. You said no one would be hurt, Adrien shouted. Hargrove's face changed. Lower your voice. You said the injector was saline. It was. Then why access her allergy records? To make the account credible. And her mother? That was Stephen's concern. You knew about the ambulance address. Hargrove lunged for the drive. Adrien knocked his hand away. The laboratory door opened again. Two police officers entered with Celia behind them. Hargrove stopped moving. Adrien looked toward the ceiling camera. Somehow, he knew I was watching. His cover was gone. Not merely the story about the permission slip. Not merely the stolen research. The image he had built, the flawless captain, protective friend, gifted leader, collapsed beneath his own recordings, login history, messages, and panic. But he still tried one final lie. Elena planned this, he told the officers. She set me up. I stepped into the laboratory. His face went white. I had imagined that moment for years. In my old life, I rehearsed speeches while washing dishes, commuting to work, and lying awake after nightmares. I imagined shouting every detail until he finally looked ashamed. When the moment came, I felt no need to shout. I placed the scanned permission slip on the bench between us. My mother signed this version at 7:14 on Monday morning, I said. Mr. Vale scanned it at 8:43. You took custody of the folder at 9:05. The altered original appeared in your hand after school. You told me twice to throw away the copy, then repeated the same demand after the forged form exposed your father's involvement. You used Hargrove's login to steal my project and open the incident plan yourself. Adrien's lips parted. I continued. You did not protect me. You selected me. He looked at the officers. I didn't write that plan. Maybe not. I didn't know about her mother. Not at first. His eyes returned to mine. Then you know I was used. There was the last trap. He wanted me to separate him from the men above him, to treat his discovery of their cruelty as proof of innocence. In my first life, I might have. I had always confused being less monstrous with being good. You stole my work before you knew, I said. You forged consent before you knew. You helped design an emergency where I would be drugged and blamed before you knew. Learning that your partners were worse does not make you better." He flinched. The officers asked him to place his hands behind his back. Hargrove began demanding legal counsel. Adrien did not move. He stared at the permission slip as if a sheet of paper had betrayed him. It had not. Paper does not betray anyone. It remembers pressure.
Ink. Time.
Hands. It holds whatever people are arrogant enough to leave behind. As the officer led him away, Adrien turned once. "What are you?" he asked. The question was so quiet only I heard it. I thought of twisted metal, hospital corridors, my mother's empty chair, 8 stolen years. Then I looked through the laboratory window toward the car park, where she stood beneath a clear umbrella beside Celia, alive and waiting for me. "I'm the girl who kept the copy," I said. The investigation lasted 11 months. Principal Hargrove resigned before he was dismissed, but resignation did not protect him from charges related to records tampering, conspiracy, and obstruction. Dr. Cole denied everything until forensic recovery revealed medical queries made from his clinic account and payments routed through shell vendors. Investigators recovered messages describing the forged consent, the staged emergency, and the instruction to obtain my mother's confidential documents. The ambulance address change became the darkest discovery. In the old timeline, Dr. Cole's clinic had submitted an outdated address to a shared medical coordination system 3 days before my mother's emergency. In this life, the attempted update was flagged before it took effect. Celia had placed an alert on my mother's records after the forged permission slip surfaced. One sheet of paper did not merely save my scholarship. It saved her life. My mother still became dangerously ill 7 weeks later. I still woke at 2 a.m. to find her feverish and confused. I still called an ambulance with shaking hands. But this time, it came to the correct house. This time, I rode beside her. This time, she survived the infection. Cancer remained cruel. Rebirth did not make me a miracle worker. It did not erase pain, guarantee recovery, or turn every warning into victory. My mother underwent more treatment, lost her hair again, and spent months rebuilding strength. But she lived long enough to see me graduate. She lived long enough to watch the National Science Committee restore my authorship and disqualify Adrien's submission. She lived long enough to attend my university orientation wearing a red scarf and complaining that the campus coffee tasted burnt. Adrien pleaded guilty to reduced charges as a juvenile. His lawyers described him as pressured by influential adults. That was true. It was also incomplete. At sentencing, he gave a statement about ambition, fear, and manipulation. He apologized to the school, the competition committee, his family, and any students affected. He never said my name. I was grateful. An apology that avoids the injured person is not remorse. It is reputation management wearing a softer suit. My mother kept the original scanned copy framed in her study. The tear Adrien made ran halfway down the page, stopping just above her handwritten warning. She refused to replace it with a cleaner print. "Damage is part of the evidence," she said. On the 10th anniversary of that Monday, I took the frame down and studied the paper again. She had drawn a boundary. Adrien's entire plan depended on teaching me to discard it. I had done that in my first life because I thought obedience made me reasonable. I thought keeping peace made me mature. I thought doubt was something intelligent women should direct inward. Rebirth did not give me stronger evidence. At the beginning, it gave me the same evidence and a different instinct. Hold on. Ask why they need it gone. My mother entered the study while I was still holding the frame.
"You're brooding," she said. "I'm reflecting."
That is brooding with better branding. She was thinner than she had been before cancer, her hair silver now, her movements slower. But she was there. I handed her the frame. "Do you ever wish we burned it?" I asked. She stared at me as if I had asked whether she wished we had burned the house.
"No."
"Even after everything?" "Especially after everything." She placed the frame back on the wall and adjusted it until it hung straight. Then she said, "People misunderstand evidence. They think it matters because it punishes someone. Doesn't it?" "Sometimes." but its first purpose is to protect the truth from being replaced. I looked at the signature. Her signature. The real one. In another life, Adrien had used a copy of it to manufacture consent. In this one, the same signature anchored a chain of facts strong enough to resist him. That was the final interruption in the story I once believed. I thought revenge would feel like his face going pale. It did not. I thought justice would sound like handcuffs closing. It did not. It sounded like an ambulance stopping outside the correct house. It sounded like my mother complaining about hospital soup. It sounded like Ms. Darcy saying, "I kept a secondary record." It sounded like my own voice saying no before I possessed enough proof to feel safe. Adrien's cover was blown in a laboratory beneath fluorescent lights, but his defeat began hours earlier in homeroom, when he held out his hand and expected me to surrender the envelope. I had been reborn with memories of death, betrayal, and everything that followed. Yet the act that changed my life was almost embarrassingly small. I held on. When he told me to throw the signed permission slip away, I kept it. And because I kept it, the lie had to stand beside the truth. Once they were side by side, everyone could see which one had been forged.